And after a while, you see, a writer does watch what an actor is doing with a character, if there's a series, and begins to write for that character. And so the writer, Roy Clark, did pick up on various things. I suppose he picked up a little bit on the fact that I could tumble and get up again. But what Clive Swift, who is a classical actor, he spent 9 years with the Royal Shakespeare Company, what he mined out of that very spare text built up, I know, a wonderfully believable marriage relationship of a rather strange kind. Everyone looks at Clive and thinks, you know, why does he stay with this woman? But we had to discuss this and work this out for ourselves, because the writer gave us no inclination of his background. You don't hear anything really about his family. You hear about Hyacinth's family all the time, and they're there in the flesh. So we had to work that out. Also, the writer didn't tell us what kind of a job he did, and this was essential to know for the economy of the running of the household. What kind of a house did they live in? How was she able to afford really nice clothes and those hats? And he was a rather dull little man, very difficult to play dull little men very well. This was a great achievement. Oh, I do admire him. Part of that basic premise of the comedy was, of course, the dichotomy between one part of the family, the Slobs, the Onslow and Daisy characters, and that little tarty sister who lived with them, and this person who wanted to better herself and get out of that rut. And she'd done it to a certain extent, but she was reaching for the stars, really, socially. They were all wonderful, because you can't run a situation comedy just on one character. I think Hyacinth is the engine, that's the energy, the center, but there has to be input and contrast and tension with the others. They have to hold their own, and an audience has to know what kind of a world they belong to and how it clashes with the central character. And I think you got that, and they were all very experienced. Great joy. I mean, think of again, it wasn't in the script, but Judy Cornwell, who played Daisy, created this ridiculous child bride, you know, who adored Onslow, this great slob of a fellow. They were a delight, and a total contrast, you know, those scenes everybody used to enjoy watching, because they let Hyacinth off the hook for a short time. You couldn't take that bombardment for too long. I wonder why Daisy idolized Onslow, because he had pretensions too. I mean, the funny thing about him was that he had intellectual pretensions, and they were both very plump people. I'm sure plump people find that they magnetize each other. I don't know. You don't often see a very thin person with a very plump person, do you? And they were the same shape. They adored eating. You see, those two neighbors were interesting. A sister and a brother sharing a house together. The brother a bit of a failure. The Josephine Tewson character next door, who was terrified of Hyacinth, also admired her in a way. But to expose herself to the requirements of behaving socially correctly absolutely terrified her. But I think she got some kind of excited kick out of that, in a way. There are people who love being sort of victims, aren't there? And I think she was a born victim. She brought a great deal to it, and a different kind of energy, a terrifying neurotic energy. Comedy comprises exquisite anticipation. If you get to know a character, for instance, in a situation comedy, and the audience get to know and are able to predict how this character might behave. But at the same time, there must be some tremendous surprise which hits the character, and then the joy, of course, for an audience is to see how this character copes with a crisis, with a danger, with something that comes at them out of left field. Now, there must be a structure to the presentation of that character. The familiarity that an audience feels with a character must be based on a knowledge that is built up. It can be done within 3 or 4 episodes, I think. And then the audience get to expect what that character is going to do, also what that character might be going to say. And this is where things like catchphrases come in. My particular catchphrase as Hyacinth, of course, was picking up the phone and announcing myself as Lady of the House speaking, which I understand a lot of middle-class ladies now use in their own homes. This is a very old device. It's an old music hall device. Wonderful stand-up comics of the old days, the music hall tradition in this country, which influenced me a great deal because I managed as a small girl to see some of the great, great music hall performers. They all had catchphrases, and you waited for them. You waited for them. And they would tease you and not bring it into the conversation until, you know, your patience was nearly giving out. And when it happened, it was just joyous. And it also bound people together. People use these phrases. I can get into a taxi and a man will throw something at me that I say as the character.